If they bury those logs, they will kill every station on the labor routes and call it containment.
Across the galaxy, humans have been treated as the species you sent, where conditions became too ugly, too dangerous, or too contaminated for anyone respectable to survive. That contempt had just become the only reason anyone understood the plague at all. After the outbreak spread from a frontier station to a pristine core transit spindle, Elias Vance and his allies discovered something worse than infection. The plague was being directed, and the first response from power was not confession, it was silence. The emergency data vault aboard Aster Gate still shook with distant alarms. Behind transparent alloy walls, copied rescue logs, suit footage, telemetry bursts, and witness statements hovered in stacked light like evidence waiting to be murdered cleanly.
A sealed order just reached my channel. All human rescue recordings are to be confiscated. Witness access revoked. Outbreak telemetry classified under Public Stability Authority.
That is not quarantine procedure. That is narrative control.
Then control it later. Right now people need the truth before the next clean habitat starts breathing like this one.
Security retrieval is already inbound.
Saren opened the order in shared view. It wore the cold language of civilized emergency, continuity assurance, panic mitigation, biosecurity discretion. The words were elegant. The intent was slaughter dressed for committee review.
Listen carefully. The directive authorizes temporary media suppression, labor route transit freezes, and selective corridor denial where contamination probability exceeds civilian calming thresholds.
Selective corridor denial. That is a polished way to say seal the poor decks first.
No, polished would be if they pretended to look sorry. What that means is weld the doors, cut the feeds, and tell the labor crews they died for stability.
Toma sounded like a man reading weather, because he had heard the same forecast before, only with different logos on the uniforms outside.
If they classify the pattern data, every station manager in the core will keep forcing people into sterile refuge nodes. That helps the organism. We already know that.
How long before the vault is scrubbed?
9 minutes before the retrieval team reaches this deck, less if they bypass my office.
Then we stop talking like this is a hearing and start acting like it's a rescue.
Lyra dragged the live signal shard into a medical sim array. The display filled with transmission braids, civic alert loops, sterilization firmware tags, and route logic crawling through the station like a second nervous system hidden inside the first.
There, the command pulse is hopping through emergency guidance relays. It is disguised as sanitation correction traffic.
Can you trace the sender?
Yes, and I do not like the answer. Palladian Biodefense, core contractor. They wrote half the sterility doctrine for the inner transit lanes and sold the council the response models now being used to manage this outbreak.
A new layer of the map lit in red: evacuation corridors, triage routing, refuge recommendations. Every elegant emergency path bent civilians toward the cleanest chambers on the station.
It is not merely tracking spread. It is shaping behavior. Their guidance keeps concentrating frightened people into exactly the environments that let the plague bloom fastest.
How many systems use Palladian protocols?
Enough that if this stays buried, the next outbreak will be escorted by official signage.
So the monster learned our routes, then sold the map back as safety.
And these trial tags, they match labor route exposure records, human-assigned maintenance sectors, salvage lungs, waste recovery incidents. Someone built this model on the bodies of workers the core never expected to listen to.
Data could prove design. It could not prove contempt to anyone determined not to hear it. For that, Elias turned to the one thing bureaucracies hated more than evidence: a witness who had survived them.
Toma, I need it clean, short enough to hit hard, plain enough nobody can hide inside the wording.
Plain is the only kind I've got left.
The booth light turned blue. Toma sat forward in a loner thermal wrap, scars silver under the station glare, looking less like a political witness than a maintenance worker who had been dragged all the way to the center of the galaxy just to say what everyone peripheral already knew.
My name is Toma Reeve, Frontier Maintenance, Kepri 9 survivor. Human crews were always sent in first when filters failed, when vents went bad, when a hold started leaking spores, when a med wing got a stain nobody could classify. Management called us contamination tolerant because expendable sounded rude on paperwork. You want to know why humans recognized this plague before your experts did? Because we have spent generations inside the kind of broken systems your worlds paid us to keep ugly on your behalf. We know the smell of a station that's about to choose the equipment over the people. If these logs disappear, you are not preventing panic. You are preserving the habit that built the kill zone in the first place.
Seren did not interrupt. For once, the council's language had to sit in the room beside the human version of what it did. Beyond the vault glass, shuttles kept arriving with survivors, med crates, and fresh fear. Aster Gate was not a courtroom. It was an evacuation wound being told to remain orderly.
We release everything now. Raw footage, testimony, route warnings, all of it.
If you trigger a blind stampede through an active spindle, you will turn one engineered disaster into 3 natural ones.
And if you obey that order, you hand the enemy another station.
I am trying to force an official release path. Once I break custody, I lose the authority that still lets me delay them.
Seren, the system you are trying to save wrote a silence order faster than it wrote a rescue order.
People in clean towers always think there's one last lawful minute left. Funny how that minute never belongs to the ones behind the sealed door.
Argue later. Palladian's command pattern is accelerating. Someone on their side knows we found the signal.
Give me one attempt to stop this through the front channel.
You have until the knock reaches the door.
The knock did not come as Knuckles. It came as a cleanroom security team in white pressure armor, visorless and polished, like they had dressed for the idea of contamination instead of the thing itself. Their lead officer pushed a surrender demand to Seren's panel under Civic Stability Authority.
I am the ranking auditor on this deck. You will wait for my verification.
While Seren stalled them, Lyra cut deeper into the order packet. Her face changed first, then her voice.
Elias, Seren, this is not evidence quarantine. The packet contains deletion triggers for mirrored copies, witness sedation instructions, and a prepared public statement blaming human procedural deviation for contamination spread at Aster Gate.
They wrote the lie before they finished counting the dead.
For one brief second, Seren looked exactly like what the galaxy had trained her to be, composed, balanced, useful to authority. Then she looked at Toma, then at Elias, then at the white-armored team waiting to erase the only honest record on the deck.
Your order is compromised by undeclared reputational motive and falsified attribution language. I am invoking emergency audit hold.
The lead officer objected at once. Seren did not even let the protest finish forming.
Watch me use it anyway.
Seren did not route the release through a pirate feed or a whisper network. She opened the civic emergency channels themselves, the same immaculate system the Council used to teach the public what counted as calm.
This is Auditor Seren Vale. I am authenticating the following release as emergency public interest evidence. Mirror it immediately. Do not await secondary clearance.
The first images hit the network in brutal sequence. Elias sealing a biofilm-ridden hatch with his shoulder, braced against failure. Human crew hands lifting cradle units out of a poisoned nursery. Toma half-conscious beside ruptured medpods. Alien survivors clinging to workers the Corps had spent generations calling disposable.
To any station hearing this, do not cluster civilians in polished refuge halls, sealed med suites, or fully sterilized corridors. Break environmental consistency. Open mixed-air service zones. Follow human rescue routing if you have it. Ugly spaces are buying people time.
I am Dr. Lyra Sen of Core Epidemiology. The outbreak behavior is directed. The source signal traces to Palladian biodefense and to trial architectures built from labor route exposure data. This is not rumor. This is active evidence.
And if anyone tells you humans caused this because we were inside the mess first, remember who kept sending us into the mess while they sold clean rooms as civilization.
The network did what panic was not supposed to do. It paid attention. Across the Corps, the logs spread faster than the Council could label them unauthorized. Passenger families mirrored the footage. Dock unions pinned survival instructions over official advisories. Maintenance crews reopened service sectors that polished doctrine had sealed. The frontier did what the frontier always did when authority failed. It routed around it. For the first time, civilized viewers saw the plague and human rescue work in the same frame. They saw children carried through wet black-red corridors. They saw manual filtration levers held by dead hands. They saw how much of their safety had always rested on people they preferred not to think about.
All labor route managers are to ignore sealed denial advisories lacking independent rescue review. Mirror that too.
If you have a human maintenance crew anywhere on your station, stop sidelining them and start listening. Right now, they are not the cleanup staff. They are your pattern experts.
Palladian's core defense model depends on obedience to clean protocol. The moment populations begin using mixed-use spaces, patched ducts, irregular air and manual workarounds, its predictive advantage drops.
Look at that, filth finally found some respectability.
The leak did more than shame the council. It broke the weapon's favorite habit, getting frightened people to trust the neatest room. Then the station lights dipped, not from system failure, from priority transfer.
New signal bloom, much larger. It was dormant until the leak spread.
Where?
Freight Anchor 6, a quarantine support vessel just undocked under Palladian authority.
The external feed swung to a ship so massive it looked built from cathedral ribs instead of freight trusses. Cargo naves stacked along its spine. Sensor spires rose like towers. Along the ventral seams, black-red bloom pulsed in deliberate waves, not wild growth but synchronized breath.
That's no support ship. That's the same sickness as Kepri 9, only it learned posture.
I am reading command density architecture in the cargo core. This is not a spreading site. This is the originating hive logic carried inside mobile infrastructure.
Destination.
Core arterial lanes, highest civilian density. If it reaches the nexus intact, every prestige habitat downstream becomes kindling.
So when the lie stopped working, they launched the altar.
By then the truth was too widely mirrored to kill. Too many civic feeds carried the logs. Too many workers had copied them. Too many families had seen who entered the plague when everyone else stayed outside. The council could still fight the humans. It could no longer erase them.
I am issuing open audit locks on Palladian contracts and public warrants on every suppression order tied to this outbreak. There is no procedural path back from this.
Good, I wasn't planning on going back.
Tell me the next mission is not another room full of people waiting behind a door. We are too late to open.
No, the next mission is the source. That freight cathedral is the command hive. The pattern begins there.
On the long-range feed, the vessel opened like a mechanical cathedral learning how to breathe. Cargo vaults unfurled into chambers of living tissue. Bells became pressure pulses. Tower lights flickered through black-red veins crawling under the hull.
Then the next mission is not a rescue run. It's termination.
The alien council had tried to silence the human rescue logs. Instead, it gave the galaxy a final warning. Somewhere ahead, a freight cathedral was carrying the plague's command hive toward the heart of civilization. And once again, the only species already moving toward it was human.